Hi, this is Shaheedah Hill, the Real Realtor, getting you over the hill to home ownership. I want to talk to you about two things today. One is, should you still be buying a house? So, and I want to tell you three things to consider before you make that decision, either to move forward or to wait. And I also want to tell you three things you should be doing right now financially. So I'm going to start by going over what you should be doing financially first. And then we're going to talk about, is it still a good idea with everything going on with coronavirus? Should you still be buying? Okay, so let's start by, if you haven't already, like and subscribe to this channel for new videos every week. If you put a question in the comment, I definitely will respond. If you have like a very specific question about what you should do, I will respond to that. So put that in the comments. Plus, I asked the community to give me any of their questions, and I will answer those at the end of this video. So number one, the first thing you need to do is to evaluate, do you have enough savings? Do you have 3 to 6 months of expenses? If you do, you should be in a good position going forward, even if you were to suffer a cutback in hours or a potential layoff, those sorts of things. So you need to evaluate, do you have it? If you do not have it, that should be a goal of yours moving forward to accumulate 3 to 6 months of expenses. And how do you know whether or not you need 3, or how do you know whether or not you need 6? If your job is not very stable, if you're hourly, if it's something that is contract work, that sort of thing, or commission, like me, I'm on commission, you need to have at least 6 months. If you're more stable, say you're a teacher, a nurse, something that's in very high demand, that you know your employment is stable, you probably could get by with about 3 months of expenses. But you want to make sure, as much risk as there is out there right now, 6 is a good rule of thumb to be on the safe side, but you could go as low as 3 if your other income is stable. Also, maybe you're married and you have 2 incomes. Maybe you can do 3 instead of 6, that sort of thing. But you need to evaluate your risk level and see, what is your risk? If something was to happen, how long would you need to recover from that loss, from that job loss? So that's number one. Number two, how likely, and that goes with the layoff, how likely are you to experience a layoff? You need to really evaluate with everybody. We don't know how long this is going to last. We do not know. And we're not going to wait for the government to save us with their checks. Now, they probably will come in, but how long will they come in? How quickly will they come in? You don't know. So don't depend on the government to kind of take care of everything for you. You really need to take care of yourself and put your own financial house in order, regardless of what stimulus plan comes out of Washington. You have to make sure your financial plan is in place way ahead of time before the government does any stimulus checks or unemployment. Unemployment is never the same amount as what you used to make. It's a percentage of it. So you're going to have to learn to live on less. So that's really my number two. That kind of went with number one. But you need to implement a spending freeze. Whether you have a savings or not, you need to implement a spending freeze. And these are the things you need to make sure you are paying. We don't need to be doing anything extravagant. You need to make sure that you're paying your rent or your mortgage. If you already have a house, you need to make sure that you are paying your utilities, and you need to make sure that you're paying all of your debt payments. If you are paying extra toward those debts, I would stop doing that, specifically if you don't have enough in savings, because now that extra money should be piling up savings, because again, nobody knows how long this is going to last. Nobody knows. So you need to prepare for worst case scenario. And then if it doesn't happen, you still have enough savings in place. You need to go line by line in your budget. So I have a budget video coming out this week about how to effectively budget. So basically, you're going to write down things you have to pay. Start with your housing, then start with the utilities, then food. Anything other than that is extra. So any subscription services that you have, any, like for example, my daughter does gymnastics, it's $80. Number one, they're not even in session, but that's something that could be easily taken off the budget every month because she's not even going. And that's at this point a luxury. So those kind of things, line by line, evaluate where you're spending your money. Make sure food is a big expense for most families. make sure that you are meal planning because you're at home and that money can go very quickly toward food. You should have a plan in place for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the week so you're not overspending in any of those areas. So that's number three. Number two, you're going to implement a spending freeze in your household. And number three is, after the spending freeze, get on a zero-based budget. If you have never budgeted any money before, you want to make sure you are implementing a zero-based budget that includes all of the income that you have coming in, minus any of your expenses, your necessary bare bones, what you need to survive expenses, and whatever's left over, you need to allocate that to savings. So you're going to make this budget every month. The next month coming is April. You need to make sure you are budgeting for April now. Okay, what money is going to come in April? Don't put in that check or that stimulus check because you don't have it yet. If that happens, great, it's extra, but you want to go ahead and put in your budget right now. There are some things in effect. They're stopping all evictions. If you're living check to check, they're stopping those things. But you want to make sure if you can pay it, go ahead and pay it. If you can't pay it, make arrangements. Start reaching out to your landlord, your leasing agency. If either your hours have been cut off or you've experienced a layoff, start making those contacts now to see how it's going to happen. Because regardless, even if they delay it, you're going to have to pay it back eventually. Nobody's going to give you anything. So you want to just prepare for it ahead of time. Because if you are in the process of buying a home, then you want to keep your credit better than it. So if this does enter a recession, you don't want as a result for you to have more debt and you have a bad credit score because you didn't pay all your bills. So you need to make sure you're on a budget every single month, paying everything that you're supposed to pay so you don't have any late payments, and you're really going line by line with that budget. So those are the three things. And now I'm going to talk about, should you buy a house? So number one, I had a closing just yesterday. So it's Saturday today. I had a closing yesterday. One of my youngest home buyers, he's 23 years old. So I'm talking to, and I have 5 other first-time home buyers under contract. So I'm talking to all of them, individual by individual, to see, and I'm asking them about 3 questions that you need to ask yourself as to whether or not you should go forward with the home purchase. Now, about 3 weeks ago or so now, maybe 2.5 weeks, mortgage rates were at their lowest. Then shortly after that, they went back up because people stopped investing in mortgage-backed securities. Now the Fed, it changes every day when the president comes out with his briefings and the economics chair comes out and they're changing things, then the stock market may change. So they put more money into the Federal Reserve, into the government. So interest rates went back down, but they went up and they went down by like fluctuations of like 1 to sometimes even 1.5%. So they have not been steadily going down. They went down, they went back up, they went back down based on the financial policy of the government right now. So number one, can you take in the next, say, 3 to 6 months, your home value, the home that you bought, potentially decreasing? Okay. You have to be able to deal with that decrease. If that makes you uncomfortable, because that may happen. Again, we don't know how long the coronavirus is going to affect us. So, but if we head into a recession and demand decreases, so if people lose their jobs, they're not out buying houses. So the amount of people buying homes will go down. When the demand decreases, prices will also decrease accordingly. However, it's not going to be the same as 2008 because there's not that much inventory available for people. So right now, people are fighting over these 1 or 2 houses that are available. So it's not going to be as bad, but we don't know because we don't know how much impact the coronavirus is going to have. So what I'm telling my buyers is you may see a dip in your property values depending on what's happening, how deep of a recession we get into, how quickly we get out of it. But unless I don't really deal with that many investors, but I really deal with for home buyers, people that are wanting to live in this house, have it owner occupied. So if they're planning on living here for 5 years or more, that's what I'm telling them. As long as you're going to live here for 5 years, real estate is a buy and hold. You will make money over time. So you're going to make your money back. But you can't say, okay, I'm going to sell it next year and think I'm going to make a profit. Okay. So whatever. So number one, can you deal with the down if it goes down? Number two, are you willing to stay in your house for at least 5 years? Or if you're not willing to stay in your house for at least 5 years, or you're not going to stay in your house, you know you're going to move, you know there's a chance that something else, some other life change may happen, you may want to hold off at least until things stabilize, because you can't guarantee the value that you're paying now is going to be consistent depending on what happens. So if that makes you uncomfortable, you probably need to step back. Number three, how is your employment? Is it stable? Are you in an industry that is going to weather this storm? So we know that the cruise industry, the hotel industry, the airline industry, restaurants, anything that people need, like services that people are unable to do, personal trainers, gyms, all of the things that people have stopped doing, and they've stopped doing them drastically because a lot of people are they can't go anywhere. In Georgia, we're not under a mandatory quarantine, but schools are closed. So when they close schools, people have to be home with their children. So they're not doing anything outside. Plus, they're limiting. A lot of the restaurants are closed. So people are not doing that. They've drastically, never ever before in America have people stopped doing things for this long of a period of time. Even 9/11 might have been like a couple of days or a week before people got back to work. New York was, of course, hard hit, but in other areas, people went back to work. Sports were still going on after a week, that sort of thing. So this is the most impact that we've had in the housing market, or that could impact the housing market. Nobody's ever seen this before. So all you can do is go back and say, what typically happens during a recession? Typically during a recession, and a recession is 2 quarters of declining or negative GDP. What typically happens? Demand for things go down because people are uncertain about their jobs and their income. So that could happen. I don't think it's going to be dramatic as it was in 2008, but it could. So let me say the things you need to evaluate again if you were considering purchasing a home. One, your personal impact of coronavirus. Will you possibly face a layoff? Will you lose money? Are you a small business owner that's losing money right now? You probably want to hold off. Number two, will you be able to weather the up and down of pricing? Okay. And number three, what was my number three? Sorry, the pricing. And are you willing to live in your home for at least 5 years? Those are very important for you to evaluate to see whether or not you should move on. And I'm asking each one of my buyers those 3 questions. I'm also making sure that they are quoting with at least 3 lenders. It's never been more important. When I say mortgage rates are all over the place, depending on lender, they're all over the place. So you need to make sure you are, I'm sorry, I think it said recording stop. You want to make sure that you're quoting with at least 3 different lenders. Let me get into your questions. There were 3 questions that were asked. I wrote them on the back of this. Should I keep looking to buy? I think I answered that question. If you have a more specific question, please put it in the comments. Will the prices drop? If we enter a recession, you could see a drop in home prices. That's what typically happens during recessions. And somebody asked, they said they were a traveling nurse and they weren't sure because they worked for a lot of different companies, how that worked. So it's not the employer that needs to be consistent. It's your employment that needs to be consistent. Most lenders are looking for 2 years of employment, not with the same employer, but employment. So as long as you have employment consistently with that, at least 2 years generally, those things are going to be important to a lender, so you don't want to have big breaks in employment either. So I hope this was helpful. Everybody, please stay safe. My mom is in her 60s. My dad is in his early 70s. So we're checking on them. We're staying away from them. We're social distancing because although my mom doesn't have any pre-existing conditions, my dad does. So we're just making sure they have enough food, all of those things, and they're good at home. So please take care of your families, take care of yourselves, reach out to neighbors if possible, and please follow me, like and subscribe to my channel for new videos every week. Thank you so much.